Okay. So hello everyone, I'm Fatima Azam and I will be the host for today's Startup Grind Fireside Chat. The topic we have today is opportunities for educational startups in Pakistan. Today we have with us Mr. Umair Kamil. He's the founder of Tutoria.pk. Tutoria.pk is a digital self-study platform for e-learning services. We'll have Umair tell us more about it in detail. So hello Umair and thank you for coming.
Assalamualaikum. Assalamualaikum. Thank you so much for having me over, Fatma.
It's a pleasure. So let's start off by having an introduction about you and your journey from being a student to now being the founder of Tutoria.pk. Tell us about any challenges that you might have faced on this journey and just about
All right,
yourself.
great. So basically, after completing my studies, during my studies, what happened was basically that I really understood the value of edtech, and that's because I was studying in the UK, and I realized that there's a problem with the UK. कि जब आप अपना यूनिवर्सिटी जाते हो तो आपने जब मेजर सेलेक्ट कर लिया होता है यूके के अंदर you cannot change it. You are bound to that major. So for the next 3 years in your bachelor's, you cannot take course credits outside of your school. You cannot go into a liberal arts. You cannot take liberal arts courses. You cannot take other schools courses, and you're kind of bounded and trapped in one degree. So after year one, I was really disturbed by the idea that okay, for the next 2-3 years I have to study what I've chosen, and I have no option liberty to choose it. So edtech for me was revolutionary because Coursera and Udemy gave me that liberation and freedom to actually break out of that, to be able to take courses and learn about things that actually appealed to me, that actually motivated me, that actually inspired me. And in that process, I realized that edtech is in fact the automation of education in the way we transmit it, in the way we deliver it, in the way we explain it, and so on and so forth. So it adds so much efficiency and effectiveness to the entire process that it just made a lot of sense as an idea to me. So I always say this, I'm twice a learner and probably twice a teacher, so that I am always learning and teaching. I always believe that once taught isn't twice learned, it's actually more than that, because when you give your knowledge to someone, that has a really big impact. And more than that, what edtech enables you to do is allows you to teach multiple times to many people, to do it in more ways than one and have a really big impact. So, for example, let's suppose Coursera and the tutors are across the entire world, but they're having a meaningful impact on students from the entire globe. Udemy gives instructors that liberation that they can make a course from any part of the world regarding their skill set, and even in a competitive marketplace, bring their knowledge to the surface and have an impact on so many people whilst monetizing it. So even in university, I was really inclined towards the idea of edtech because it liberated me. And two of the courses that really had a huge impact on the way I see things and the way I see education and the way I see learning and education, and those are two different things. I'll get into that in a couple of minutes. Is that there's so much room in the world for it to become a more natural, a more habitual process. What that means is, for example, let's suppose that if I was with you, Arzish, and anyone from Ejad Labs, and we went to Quetta Chai, and we got up and we did a survey and we asked people about cricket, they would know a lot. They would know about, what matches, who's won in which matches, which are the top players in which years, and so on and so forth. Halaki, they've never, done that formal course. They've never, gone online and like, okay, मैं cricket का course करता हूँ, ये करता हूँ. They know about all the roles. They know about everything in that. तो एक बात जो इससे जाहिर होती है वो ये होती है कि यार लर्निंग जो है हर वक्त एक इंसान कर रहा होता है. इंसान thought that this process has a lot to do with certain forms of intrinsic motivation that we have to always absorb information and to process it and then output something. So हर इंसान ने अपनी एक राह ढूंढनी होती है. And edtech for me, that was the enabler. It allowed me to really understand the process of learning, how learning evolves at different stages. And what I've seen is, as we're younger, our learning is a lot less opinionated. We are a lot more open, and as we grow older and as we have more defined preferences, then our learning is a lot more narrower. कि यार मैंने ये चीज सीखनी है, मैंने इसी पे focus करना है. So for me, this became a very, very interesting subject. Also at university, I used to read a lot of articles on cognitive neurosciences. I used to read a lot of articles on how certain machine learning algorithms were inspired by cognitive neuroscience. And cognitive neuroscience essentially deals with the study of how the brain behaves when it's learning about new things, when it's comprehending new information, and it's processing new information. So it is the science of cognition. It is looking at the brain from the angle of cognition. So edtech became a really big favorite for me because edtech would allow me to make that impact, allow me to work with people who wanted to make that impact. So when I came to Pakistan, I saw that there is this audience that is rapidly getting access to smartphones, and the data was there. This audience that is very young, that is very, very vibrant, that is actively utilizing those smartphones to consume digital content, to create digital content, and that was the 13 to 18-year-old Gen Z of Pakistan, predominantly most of which falls within the metric and inter market. So I started studying this market, really understand how they think, what they use, what kind of media they're going to consume, how they're going to actually react to education, what kind of education is going to work for them, and what kind of education isn't going to work for them. And I saw that Pakistan ke andar, the biggest gap is that people who've, and I'm not the first one to tackle the metric inter market. There are other startups who are doing the same thing or have done the same thing. But the difference with which Tutoria comes into the market is by actually doing it with a Gen Z in mind. Our content is tailored to Gen Z, and that is the ethos of Tutoria.pk, that whatever we make, it is for them. So our content has a lot of illustrations, has a lot of animations, and all the concepts are explained in what we call conversational tone. कॉन्वर्जेशनल का मतलब ये है कि मैं आपसे बात कर रहा हूँ, कभी मैं उर्दू में करूंगा, कभी मैं इंग्लिश में करूंगा. मैं ये नहीं सोचूंगा कि यार मैंने फातिमा से अंग्रेजी में बात करनी है, मैं ये नहीं सोचूंगा मैंने फातिमा से उर्दू में बात करनी है. जो मुझे आसान लग रहा है मैं उसमें करता जाऊंगा विदाउट स्टॉपिंग द फ्लो ऑफ माई कॉन्वर्जेशन. क्योंकि आपने एक जेनजी वाले बच्चे से बात करनी है तो आपने एक नेचुरल तरीके से बात करनी है, आपने चीजों को विजुअलाइज करना है और आपने चीजों को एनिमेट करना है. These habits come from this DNA in the content of Tutoria comes from my understanding of how andragogy and pedagogy work. What that means is कि इंसान एज अ बच्चा, यानी कि जब बच्चा जो होता है वो किस तरह सीखता है और जब बड़ा होता है किस तरह सीखता है. तो दो तरीके हो सकते हैं, या तो यार आप उसके अराउंड एनवायरनमेंट बना दें और आप टीचर को बहुत हेविली ट्रेन करें, या आप शुरू से कंटेंट के डीएनए के अंदर वो चीजें करें जो कि अच्छी लर्निंग हैबिट्स और अच्छी लर्निंग एबिलिटीज को इनेबल करे फ्रॉम द वेरी बिगिनिंग. जिसमें एक विजुअलाइजेशन इज वन ऑफ द वेरी की वंस. तो ट्यूटोरिया का जितना भी कंटेंट है, इट वाज मेड विद द ethos and with the background that all of what I've learned from edtech and the automation of edtech and building good content, because content is key and content is king in this world. That is the culmination of everything over there. So that's the idea behind Tutoria, to bring Gen Z content for the metric inter segment of Pakistan and really revolutionize or disrupt the way education is delivered. So we started with the pre-recorded side, जिसमें आपके video lectures आ जाते हैं, book के सवाल जवाब आ जाते हैं और past paper के solutions आ जाते हैं. And most recently, alhamdulillah, we've also launched the quizzes so that students can now take their mock tests or mock exams. They can take it based on question type, level of difficulty, the number of questions they want, and how long they want the test to be, so that they can really get an idea of where they stand in the chapter level. Inshallah, in the future, we're going to make it more advanced. We're going to give it topic level as well, ताकि वो topic level पे जाके test कर सकें. So that's what has been going on with Tutoria and everything. I'm sorry, I've just been going on. I didn't stop. When someone asks me my story, I just go from the very start all the way to
No.
the
You
end. So
actually covered the next question that I was going to ask you, which was regarding the role that you see Tutoria playing for the future of education tech in Pakistan and how will it evolve. So I think you've pretty much covered it. So moving on, I'd like to ask you about your point of view on the opportunities that edtech startups have in Pakistan, and do you think it's very difficult for them to scale up in the existing ecosystem? Are there a lot of challenges as compared to other technology-based?
With any digital product service, there's always a very low switching cost. Just for example, let's suppose that I'm using some sort of a product that allows me to do accounting for my shop. Let's suppose I have a bookstore. Let's put it that way, right? Another competitor comes and says that use my app to do your accounting and to manage your ledger, and I can very easily switch to it. So there is, how do we enable that USP that allows me to target consumers and help them shift? And there's always that risk in edtech as well, just as in any other app. But the key kind of area where where there are a lot of opportunities is either building entry test side or is going towards the technical and side. So I think at the moment there are a lot of competitors, and every day there are new edtechs that are coming up tackling different segments or similar segment. In the metric inter segment, there's Tutoria, there's Noon Academy, there's Ed Casa. Most recently, there are Abwab and there is also Maqsad. So, there is a lot of growth, and there's obviously growth when there's a potential opportunity to capitalize upon in an area. तो एडटेक के अंदर अभी पाकिस्तान में है बहुत ज्यादा अपॉर्चुनिटी. हालांकि ऑफ कोर्स देयर आर a lot of startups popping up, a lot of people doing great work, but it doesn't mean कि अपॉर्चुनिटी खत्म हो जाती है. अपॉर्चुनिटी अभी भी बहुत है. अभी भी फॉर एग्जांपल किसी ने आके एंट्री टेस्ट को डिस्टर्ब नहीं किया, अभी भी किसी ने आके एसीसी वाली मार्केट को डिस्टर्ब नहीं किया, अभी भी किसी ने आके आईएल्स वाली मार्केट को डिस्टर्ब नहीं किया. And I'm talking, when I say disruption, I mean a change at the national level. कि आप जाके पूछें किसी से अपने मोहल्ले के अंदर कि यार आइल्स की कौन सी ऐप यूज करो, तो बंदे के इट शुड बी एट द टिप्स देयर. आपको जब टिप्स पे आवाज आए कि यार तुम ये वाली ऐप यूज करो और तुम ये वाली वेबसाइट यूज करो, then you really know that people, someone has really broken it. As I like to call it, do we buy Pampers or do we buy diapers? A lot of people don't manage to answer that question directly, because we actually buy diapers, whereas Pampers is the brand, right? So this is an example of when a startup has really done it, or a company has really done it. And for there's so much opportunity, and the only time when I believe there will be saturation in NetTech is when there's an app which has gotten to the home page of people. That means कि यार जब लोग अपना मोबाइल खोलें और होम पे वो ऐप, तब एक नजर आता है कि एक मार्केट के अंदर सैचुरेशन हो. पाकिस्तान में तो it's hugely possible for edtechs to come and disrupt the entry test market or any of the other markets that I mentioned. There's also another big opportunity in Pakistan, Air School, I believe, by Fatima, who is still founder of Tech Juice. I'm not sure if she's still involved in Tech Juice on a day-to-day basis. She's done Air School, and Air School gives instructors the ability to create and host their own space, put up their own lectures, turn those lectures into courses, and then charge for those courses. So it's an all-in-one solution, and I believe they're doing a really great job. I'm not sure about the numbers, I'm not sure about the traction. Hopefully that's also good. But there's so much liberation that probably Air School and that startups like Tutoria, Air School, and the other ones in the space are going to give to people in the K-12 and in the non-K-12 segments. So there's so much opportunity to be leveraged. There's also the B2B route in EdTech, which is digitization of schools, digitization of academies, institutions, and that's a really, really big market to capitalize upon, because these are entities which have been using legacy methods or legacy processes for a long time. यानी कि अभी भी schools digitize नहीं है पाकिस्तान के अंदर. आपकी enrollment से लेके आपकी attendance अभी भी जो है maximum को अगर आप देख लें तो अच्छे स्कूलों के अंदर, ज्यादा स्कूलों के अंदर नहीं, अच्छे स्कूलों के अंदर Google Classrooms होती हैं. वरना schools को अभी तो पाकिस्तान के अंदर schools ये कहते हैं हम Zoom यूज करें तो हम digitize हो गए हैं. ऐसा नहीं होता. आपकी इतनी ज्यादा चीजें मैनेज करने वाली, आपने स्टूडेंट्स को मैनेज करना है, आपने टीचर्स को मैनेज करना है, आपने क्लासरूम्स को मैनेज करना है, और उनके अराउंड, उन एंटिटीज की कम्युनिकेशन के अराउंड बहुत सारा डेटा क्रिएट हो रहा होता है. स्टूडेंट टीचर की इंटरेक्शन के दरमियान बहुत डेटा क्रिएट होता है, स्टूडेंट और क्लासरूम की इंटरेक्शन के दौरान बहुत डेटा क्रिएट होता है. There's huge space for also innovating the way lectures are delivered. They don't necessarily have to be delivered via, how should I say, a video. It can be an interactive lesson. उसके अंदर एक छोटी सी वीडियो है, फिर a paragraph है, फिर एक quiz है, फिर एक छोटी सी game है. And there's a startup in India who's doing that. I believe they're called Quizlet or Quizly. I can't remember the name exactly, but they're doing a phenomenal job with that. And their product isn't focused on the Indian market. It is an international product, and it allows teachers to make interactive quizzes and interactive lessons for their students, and they can use that in real time. So instead of having a Zoom session, एक टीचर ने अपनी ब्रॉडकास्ट कर दी क्लासरूम, और क्लासरूम की आप समझे पावर पॉइंट लाइव चल रही है, और उस पावर पॉइंट के साथ बच्चा रियल टाइम के अंदर इंटरेक्ट भी कर सकता है, उस पावर पॉइंट पे क्विज रियल टाइम के अंदर बच्चा ले भी सकता है, and all from the comfort of their own device, whether it's a laptop or a mobile. So there's so much opportunity in Pakistan to be leveraged. I think both on the B2B side, which is the schools, academies, etc., and on the B2C side, and on the K-12 and the non-K-12 market segment. So huge opportunity in Pakistan right now.
Okay, so adding to your point, I wanted to just share an experience that I had with an institute. I won't name them, but during COVID and everything, they did shift everything online, the teaching material and everything. And now that COVID has somehow settled down, they told their teachers to not teach online anymore, and they said they're not allowed to teach via Zoom or MS Teams, and people have to come to the classes and attend them. And I was just shook at the step they've taken, because they just undid the growth that they did in the last 2 years. So moving on, you
so
said
this happens
that
when there is a bit of a sarkari mindset at the back, and they believe things should be in a traditional way. So how should I say it? There's right and there's left and there's center. So when people are के status quo ठीक है, तो फिर यही होता है. वो change आता है, वो ultimately reverse हो जाता है. So this happens in legacy institutions slash legacy idare. This is unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's the reality of Pakistan, and in fact, the reality of South Asia. Actually, this similar issue happens. You bring change in an organization, and then the change reverses when the situation kind of curtails and everything.
And it's very quick to be reversed.
Yeah.
So
Because वो उनसे बर्दाश्त नहीं होता ना कि नहीं मुझे नहीं समझ आ रही. It's like कि यार एक person, let's suppose register पे अपनी accounting कर रहा है. हालांकि there are so many, let alone Excel, there are so many even more advanced methods to do your accounting and finance. But they'll be like नहीं यार मुझे इसकी आदत है, ये मेरे लिए ज़्यादा आसान है. So this happens unfortunately.
you would be surprised to know कुछ ऐसे इदारे भी हैं जो even Excel के courses जो हैं वो paper पे exam ले रहे होते हैं कि लिख के बताओ formulas.
Exactly.
So yeah, khair. So you said your target market is majorly Gen Z right now.
Yeah.
How do you see the target market segment expanding in the future? And also another thing I noticed on your website is that you have, I think, 2 to 3 options for the payment methods. So how do you see any stakeholders in the industry, for example, the fintech, how do you see them collaborating with edtech in the future and expanding the market segment?
So just can I have a recap of your two questions? One is regarding how fintechs can collaborate with edtechs. That's one.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
what was the other question? Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
How do you see your target market segment expanding in the future? Like from Gen Z, how do you see yourself expanding to a larger
How do I
market
see
segment?
Tutoria entering new markets, or how do I see
Yes.
the current
Yes.
market? Okay, how do we see? Okay, fair enough. So first I'll answer, how do we see ourselves going to new market? So for us, the natural kind of next step is the entry test market, because
Yes.
जब एक बच्चा अपनी 12वीं जमात से फ्री होता है, the next thing is कि यार उसने entry test लेना ही लेना है. Entry test के अंदर भी, there is a huge gap. Near peer is doing some great work over there, but we believe that we can do something to rival them, or possibly even better in the near future. So there's that, because beyond lectures, there are advanced testing systems that can be leveraged to really create that mock situation or that mock exam situation which students can take and then see where they really stand. Because a big part of the entry test is to simulate those real circumstances. जब तक आप असल circumstances के अंदर बैठ के वो entry test नहीं लेते, तब तक आपको अपना नहीं पता चलता कि यार आप कहाँ पे बैठे हो. So there can be a huge gap between reality and versus your performance if you take the same test in untimed circumstances. So there's one there. The other thing is, the way we see ourselves going forward is we're probably looking to go towards the technical upskilling side, which is possibly creating a Udemy-like model for Pakistan, focus more on the localized languages, focus created in more of a localized tone. Of course, there will be that element of visualization as there is to the ethos of Tutoria. But we need to balance out that way, how do we go for an instructor-led model whilst maintaining the same quality of content that we're aiming for. So we're hoping to, do something around the lines of a Udemy / Skillshare of Pakistan, allowing people to really technically upskill themselves. Because I think what's going to happen is that एक level तक आपकी formal education जो है ना, it definitely is absolutely necessary. But after that point, one really needs to see what kind of skill sets are going to allow me to monetize, are going to allow me to do something big in life. And the next question is, to what extent does a bachelor's degree or a master's degree actually contribute to employment success or to entrepreneurial success? And at that point, it's really not about कि यार किसने हार्वर्ड से अपना बैचलर्स किया या किसने लम से अपना बैचलर्स किया, किसने ऑक्सफोर्ड से किया. It's more about कि यार, do you know the skill or do you not know the skill? For example, let's suppose if I went to Yale today and I got my bachelor's or my master's from there, and I apply for a front-end programming role. If I don't know any HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, I'm going to get refused from the job. Equally, if I'm not good, I'm still going to get refused from the job. Whereas someone who went to, not a very well-renowned university, whatever its name may be, and they've, really been focusing on building that skill and have first-hand experience, project experience on that, whether it's freelance projects or whether it's company projects, the likelihood of them getting the job and succeeding on the job is a lot higher, right? I'm not saying soft skills don't matter. Soft skills matter a lot, but this is the age of not just soft skills, it's also the age of multiple technical skills at the same time. Because अगर आप एक computer के साथ communicate नहीं कर सकते at an advanced level, whether it's as a business analyst, whether it's as a data scientist, whether it's as a data engineer, whether it's as a developer, whether it's as a designer or a computer artist, then you are curtailing your chances of employment. And अगर आप ये कह रहे हो कि यार हाँ मैं एक ये डिग्री कर लूंगा और बस मैं एक मैनेजमेंट वाली जॉब ले लूंगा और मेरी जिंदगी गुजर जाएगी, तो ये तो बड़ी सोच नहीं है. बड़ी सोच तो ये होती है कि यार I'm going to play with data. I'm going to build something really big. I'm going to do something meaningful for the company or join, or for the startup that I build myself, whatever path that one chooses to go. So there is this huge market of technical upskilling that's going to come in Pakistan, and we're really hoping to penetrate that. We are still planning on how to go about it, what the data looks like, what angles to tackle, what the product needs to look like. So there's that. On the next side, in terms of fintech, there, in my humble opinion, there isn't any kind of kinetic opportunity other than recurring payments. Because the problem that I see in the Pakistani payment ecosystem, and this is not just limited to edtech, it is to any digital product or service, especially membership-based product services, is that recurring payments are a bit of a difficulty. For example, let's suppose if I'm to join Code Academy today, or if I join Coursera today, or if I join any platform that has a recurring monthly fees, right? Usually it's these course platforms that give you knowledge, whatever. They have these recurring fees. That's the biggest one. So for us, the opportunity would be to allow that recurring fee to occur without any disturbance. अभी होता ही है कि अब इजी पैसा है, ठीक है, इजी पैसा से या तो उसको अपने ट्यूटोरियल वॉलेट के अंदर पे लेकर आने और फिर वॉलेट के थ्रू पे करना है, या इजी पैसा से डायरेक्टली पे करना है. In either case, they have the hassle of payment every month. It's not auto deduct. तो पाकिस्तान के अंदर ऑटो डिडक्ट स्पेशली फॉर एडटेक और एनी अदर डिजिटल प्रोडक्ट सर्विसेज वो अभी बहुत कम है. तो ये कम क्या बल्कि है ही नहीं है इन टू माय नॉलेज. शायद मैं गलत भी हो सकता हूँ. There are now new fintechs opening up. Of course, they have those issues of getting licenses from the state banks and other regulatory authorities that they're facing. Hopefully, that fixes up soon for them. But automating recurring payments is a huge avenue for fintech, whether it's with fintech and edtech. That's definitely a big one. I can see that. So there's that, because one thing that I've seen in Pakistan is that there are very few people who will go for an online service and pay again for it and again for it and again for it and again for it us tarah se. Unless they're dedicated to that service, they'll go and do it, but it's a hassle. People find it to be really a hassle ke yaar main baar karu. The other hassle that I see in Pakistan, and so many fintechs have tried this and then they've realized this is not a good way to go, is the QR code scan karke pay karna. Hey, nobody likes to scan a QR code to pay. People like to scan a QR code to get a discount. That works. Discount hai, main QR code scan karunga. But if a discount means if I have to pay, I'm not going to take out my mobile. It has to be simpler. What works in fintech is tap to pay. Like you tap your mobile or you tap your card and you pay. That works, right? For edtech, obviously that's not possible. So you have to have a recurring deduction or automating that recurring deduction. So that's what we're hoping for. That any of the newer fintechs that have emerged, they get the license and they can have those automated deduction payments. And with edtech products and services, generally they're not really that expensive. They're on a monthly basis. They're in a reasonable amount of time. So I mean, hopefully the government will also support that.
Okay. Okay, so moving on, I have a very important question that I want to ask you. Do you want to shed some light on education tech pre-COVID and post-COVID, especially post-COVID? How has it grown and what changes have you seen in the market?
So to be honest, I need to be very transparent about one thing, that edtechs complement and support the idea of education rather than replace schools and academies as a whole. In no country in the world has edtech shut down all the schools and academies. And any edtech claiming that that is going to happen in the next 10 years or 20 years, unless they have the data, it's not a good claim to make. Because here's what I've realized from life. Legacy institutions and legacy industries take time to transition and pivot. It's not to make them an enemy and say, oh, this is the enemy, this is the enemy, this is the enemy. A simple example is that I would ask, how regularly are you using EasyPaisa or JashCash to do your transactions versus how regularly are you using physical cash, right? So most people in Pakistan are still using physical cash to do their transactions more than they're using EasyPaisa and JashCash to do their transactions. This is not to say that EasyPaisa and JashCash aren't growing. They're definitely growing. They're definitely going into, they're now heading towards, a weekly usage frequency at the population level. But to get to the daily usage level, it takes time. A similar situation unfolds with edtech, right? With edtech, we're going to be complementing the after-school market for education. This means that students who need revision, who need support, whether it's post-school and post-academy, this is going to be their go-to, right? Because let's be honest, at a certain point, students can't afford academies or schools to go the extra mile. चने एक बच्चा है वो स्कूल जा रहा है academy में तो क्लासेस ले रहा है उसके बाद भी उसको support चाहिए, and this is true. People do study after they're done with their school and academy. This does happen, and that's where edtech comes in. Rather than having to Google and then see कि यार अच्छा ये resources इस blog पे हैं या Khan Academy पे हैं, etc. We need material that is geared towards the Pakistani curriculum, that's there for them, that supports this economy, that supports this nation, that is made for this nation, and not for the 5%, but rather for the 95% of this nation, which is following the national syllabuses, whether it's federal, Punjab, KPK, Sindh, etc., etc. So that's where edtech really is. It has that's the kind of realization that people have had, that in the chance that institutions cannot operate the way that they do by physically calling people and having them there needs to be a support infrastructure and support ecosystem there. However, this will be a huge complement, and it will continue to be a huge complement. Schools will and institutions will still prefer that students do come in and have that, because it's very hard to replace human interaction. Take it this way, that regardless of the Google Meet and Zoom definitely existed pre-COVID, and they've definitely changed the way we conduct meetings post-COVID. However, for important meetings, people do meet up. You don't just call your friend and say, "Yeah, chalo Zoom pe mil lete hain." No, you still want to meet your friends, right? It's not like your parents are in a different part of the house and you say, "Ki Baba, main Zoom kar leta hu aapke saath." Ya Mama, yaar Zoom karte hain. It doesn't happen that way, right? A similar thing applies to teaching, right? Teachers will say कि यार तुम आ जाओ मेरी एकेडमी आ जाओ, क्योंकि उससे जब बिठा के पढ़ाना होता है ना, उसका एक और चीज होती है, ठीक है? However, उसके बाद वो कहेगा यार तुम ये रिसोर्सेज यूज करो, यहाँ से तुम्हारे कॉन्सेप्ट ठीक हो जाएंगे, यहाँ पे तुम टेस्ट लो, ये तुम्हारा ठीक हो जाएगा, तुम्हारी तैयारी यूं हो जाएगी. So edtech is going to catalyze the education ecosystem, and then eventually it will disrupt. That is how things happen. There is a natural path that edtech is going to take, just as any tech. And anyone who claims, "Oh no, artificially we are going to manage to convince the entire nation or 200 million people that we're going to shut down the schools and the academies," no, that's not how it works. It works as a catalyzing complement that takes things faster, that helps people move faster, that helps them progress faster. The other big thing that's changed is, and there's a divide in this opinion, and I can't quote exact numbers, so I'm just going to say half. Half the teachers feel that Google Classrooms was hugely beneficial with them. Half the teachers feel कि ये क्या है, वो पुराना तरीका ठीक था, right? And this is where legacy thinking comes in, right? So half of them are ready to accept that change and see, okay, no, I would prefer to use Google Classrooms or any other equivalent, Microsoft Teams. Those were the two big ones, Microsoft Teams, Google Classrooms, to manage my classes, my students, and so on and so forth. Because rather than having it, doing it on my paper, I have it in a single place, and the data is being compiled automatically. मुझे attendance नहीं लेनी पड़ती, मुझे ये नहीं देखना पड़ता कौन आया कौन नहीं आया, मुझे ये नहीं देखना पड़ता कि किसने assignment किया या नहीं किया. All of that is done in an information management system, in a software, right? So that's a big perspective that has changed. अच्छा, teachers के level पे ये है, schools के level पे ये है कि most schools do actually now want to implement a system like Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams, and they want to continue with that because it gives them the kind of data transparency that they needed from the very beginning. Pehle they were using traditional methods to manage their classrooms, teachers, students, etc., etc. Now they can use Google Classrooms to see कि यार ये इस बच्चे ने assignment किया है, किसने किया है, किसने किया है, किसने नहीं किया. There's also managed back, by the way. So schools have really been shaken apart because the management is always looking to understand, and the teachers are always looking to understand how the students are doing versus how the classroom is doing, versus what assignments were done, what assignments students struggled in. Because and this is not just this is not a belief now, it's a fact. Decisions are better with data, right? And schools have been and continue to be in need of that data. So there's that. This is what I've seen with everything come in over COVID, and that's really impacted the way schools. That's how I see the impact translate from schools, teachers, and students.
Okay, so moving on towards the last question for today.
Sure.
What advice can you give to the startups that might be watching this, who are starting out in the edtech industry, or people who are planning to work or maybe one day find a startup of their own in the edtech industry? What would you advise them that could save them from a little bit of hustle and issues?
So I think the biggest issue that I've seen anyone take, and starts with a philosophical issue, and then I'll show you how it translates from their mind into their work, and how it becomes a really toxic problem for everyone. Whenever anyone is entering their career life, they get this really bad advice from their seniors and everyone around them कि तुमने results driven होना है. There's actually no such thing as being results driven, right? What is the result of anything? Everything is a process, and then every process has a different output. मैं आज एक टेक्सटाइल मिल में काम कर रहा हूँ, results driven क्या है? मैं आज एक फाइनेंस की नौकरी कर रहा हूँ, मैं आज एक इंजीनियरिंग की नौकरी कर रहा हूँ, मैं आज एक डॉक्टर. रिजल्ट्स ड्रिवन क्या है? रिजल्ट्स ड्रिवन मींस कि मैं जाके आज 1000 पेशेंट्स को ठीक करूँ तो ये रिजल्ट है. नहीं यार, एक्चुअली मुझे हर पेशेंट को इफेक्टिवली देखना है. मैं 10 पेशेंट्स को इफेक्टिवली देख लूँ, इट्स बेटर देन कि 1000 को मैं गलत दवाई दे दूँ, राइट? Similar thing happens with engineering. I could build a shitty 100 products, right? Or I could build one really, really good product, right? So it is important to diversify. It's important to improve your efficiency. Efficiency is producing more, right? But more than efficiency, what matters is effectiveness. What studies show is being results driven doesn't make you more effective. It makes you more efficient, right? Efficiency is secondary to effectiveness. You can make something that's effectiveness and it will be used, right? Software जो है बहुत पहले की एक existence थी, ठीक है? ये नहीं है कि अब सॉफ्टवेयर आ गया और जी हमने पहली बार देखे. नहीं यार, लैपटॉप बहुत पहले हुआ करते थे. जितनी भी एप्लीकेशंस अब मोबाइल्स पे आ रही हैं, they're inspired by those legacy applications that used to exist. The difference is that these applications are now more consumer friendly and they're made for the consumer, right? But what applications are being used and what applications are getting a good rating? The ones that are most usable. That means they're effective for the user, right? तो कहने का मतलब ये होता है कि अगर आप रिजल्ट्स ड्रिवन हो जाते हैं और बार-बार आप आउटपुट पे फोकस करते रहते हैं, अल्टीमेटली आप आउटपुट जरूर दे देते हैं, मगर वो आउटपुट किसी काम की या किसी इम्पैक्ट की नहीं होती. एक होती है बात, आउटपुट देना जो है ना, आउटपुट आप किसी भी इंसान से निकलवा सकते हैं. आप प्रेशर पे निकलवा सकते हैं, आप मोटिवेशन से निकलवा सकते हैं, जिस मर्जी तरीके से निकलवा सकते हैं. इंसान का काम है आउटपुट देना. वो जहां पे भी जाएगा वो आउटपुट देगा, वो पॉजिटिव हो नेगेटिव हो. हाँ, बट अब इशू ये है कि यार उस आउटपुट का कोई इम्पैक्ट है, कोई फायदा है? बनाने को कोई भी खाना बना सकता है, मगर यार मैं जाके उस जगह से जाके क्यों पराठे खाऊं? why do I go to that place? मैं वहां के पराठे क्यों खाता हूं? मेरे घर पे भी बनते हैं, frankly बनते हैं. Why? Because मुझे पता है कि यार that is going to be very satisfactory. It has been done effectively. लोगों के घर पे चाय नहीं बनती है. लोग जाके कोटा पे जाके क्यों चाय पीते हैं? कोई नेस्कैफे ला के अपने घर पे नेस्कैफे का इंस्टेंट पाउडर डाल के 2 मिनट में कॉफी बना सकते हैं. लोग अच्छी कॉफी शॉप में जाते हैं, right? So the idea of being results driven is outdated and it's fundamentally wrong. पहली बात तो ये होगी, ठीक है? Because it is a torture on the mental health of anyone, whether they're in the startup ecosystem, whether in the job ecosystem. ठीक है? आप अपने आप को results driven करते जाएंगे. Ultimately, you are not going to be able to deliver effective output, right? So that's being results driven. I always suggest to people, be process driven. Focus on the process, the effectiveness will come and the output will shine. That's my number one advice to anyone starting off. That's one. Second thing is, whether you are going to go for jobs or whether you are going to go for a startup, whatever, or whether you're going to go for being, a freelance earner or you're going to go for being a digital nomad, आप पहले ये अंडरस्टैंड करो कि यार आपकी जो फिलॉसफी है वो पैसिव इनकम फिलॉसफी है या नॉन पैसिव इनकम फिलॉसफी है, ठीक है? और एक तीसरी फिलॉसफी होती है जिसको इन्वेस्टर फिलॉसफी, ठीक है? जो पैसिव इनकम फिलॉसफी होती है वो ये होती है कि यार मैंने बहुत ज्यादा काम नहीं करना, मैंने एक चीज पे काम करके पूरा करना है और अगली चीज पे मूव ऑन करना है और फिर अगली पे और अगली पे अगली पे. ये होती है पैसिव इनकम. फिर होती है कि इन्वेस्टमेंट फिलॉसफी की यार नहीं, मैंने उस तरह से कोई काम नहीं करना, मैंने ये देखना है कि कौन अच्छा काम करना है, मैंने उसके साथ इन्वेस्टमेंट करनी है और वो मेरे लिए काम करेगा, मुझे रिटर्न आएगा. तीसरी ये होती है कि यार नहीं, मैंने काम करना है और मैंने काम करके आउटपुट देना है. तीनों के फवायद भी हैं, तीनों के नुकसानात भी हैं. मैं तीसरी कैटेगरी में आता हूँ कि यार मैंने अपना काम करना है और अपनी चीज करनी है और इस तरह से लेकर चलना है. जो तीसरी चीज है वो बहुत ज्यादा ऑपरेशनल लोड डिमांड करती है. कहने का मतलब ये है, अगर आप एक स्टार्टअप फाउंड कर रहे हैं, मोस्ट लाइकली आप अपनी कंपनी के ऑपरेशंस के अंदर इन्वॉल्व होंगे फॉर अ लॉन्ग टाइम. जितना आप एक चीज के अंदर ऑपरेशनली इन्वॉल्व है ना, उतना आप उसकी फ्लोर के करीब आते जाते हैं, ठीक है? अब फॉर एग्जाम्पल एक चीज की दर्जे हरारत है, टेम्परेचर है. अगर मैं अभी जमीन पे बैठ जाऊं तो मुझे उसकी दर्जे हरारत महसूस होगी. अगर वो जमीन ठंडी है तो मुझे ठंडी लगेगी, अगर वो जमीन गर्म है तो वो गर्म. अगर मैं जमीन पे बैठूं नहीं, मैं कुर्सी रखूं, तो मुझे दर्जे हरारत कदरे कम महसूस होगी, मैं दरम्यान में आ गया, ठीक है? यानी कि मैं पैसिव इनकम वाली साइड पर. ठीक है? अगर मैं जमीन के बिल्कुल ऊपर आ जाऊं, यानी कि मैं खड़ा हो जाऊं, तो मुझे उसकी दर्जे हरारत महसूस होना बंद हो जाएगी, यानी कि मुझे उसका टेम्परेचर महसूस होना बंद हो जाएगा. अब मैं इन्वेस्टर फिलॉसफी पे आ. अगर आप हाई लेवल चीजों को देखते हैं और जिंदगी को हाई लेवल लेके चलते हैं और चलना चाहते हैं, गो फॉर द इन्वेस्टर माइंडसेट. and find opportunities and avenues on that line. ठीक? अगर आप समझते हैं कि नहीं, मैं इन्वेस्टमेंट की जगह कुछ अपनी स्ट्रीम्स बना के बट ऑपरेशंस में हेवीली इन्वॉल्व नहीं होना चाहता, गो फॉर दी पैसिव इनकम साइड. अच्छा, पैसिव इनकम के अंदर मोस्टली बिजनेसेस आते हैं, नॉट स्टार्टअप्स. क्यों? क्योंकि बिजनेसेस नीड टू बी बॉटम लाइन पॉजिटिव, यानी कि नेट प्रॉफिट उनका होना जरूरी है, वरना वो बिजनेस नहीं कहलाया जा सकता, वो एक लाइबिलिटी होती है. ठीक है, तो फिर आप बिजनेस वाली साइड पे जाएं और आप कोशिश करें कि आप मल्टीपल स्मॉल टू मीडियम साइज बिजनेसेस करें ताकि आपके पास इनकम स्ट्रीम्स हो, और आइडियली वो बिजनेसेस जो कि आपकी ऑपरेशन, आपकी ह्यूमन या फिजिकल एग्जिस्टेंस बहुत ज्यादा डिमांड ना करे. अब आ जाते हैं स्टार्टअप वाली साइड. स्टार्टअप वाली साइड इमेंसली पेनफुल है बट इमेंसली रिवॉर्डिंग भी. बहुत सब्र, बहुत तहम्मुल के साथ चाहिए होता है, क्योंकि आपको हर एक चीज की दर्जे हरारत महसूस होती है. जब गर्म वक्त आएगा तो आपको गर्मी लगेगी, जब ठंडा वक्त आएगा आपको ठंडी लगेगी, मगर जब ऑटम और स्प्रिंग आएगी तो आपको उसका फल भी मिलेगा. सो दैट इज हाउ इट वर्क्स. कहने को कुछ लोग ये भी कर सकते हैं, तीनों भी कर सकते हैं, बट इट डिपेंड्स ऑन दी फिलॉसफी. आप अंडरस्टैंड करें कि यार आपकी फिलॉसफी क्या है, आपका जो जिस्म है, आपका जो जहन है, वो किस चीज की तरफ इंक्लाइन करता है. सो दैट्स द सेकंड एडवाइस आई वुड गिव. द थर्ड पीस ऑफ एडवाइस आई वुड गिव इज दैट एवरीथिंग इज बेटर विद डेटा. आप माने या ना माने, आपको ये बात अच्छी लगे या बुरी लगे, अगर आप बिलीव करते हैं कि यार आपके प्रोसेसेस, आपके काम करने के तरीके ज़बानी कलामी तरीके पे बहुत अच्छे चल रहे हैं, तो आपसे बड़ा बेवकूफ कोई भी नहीं है, क्योंकि डेटा के साथ वो प्रोसेसेस बेहतर किए जा सकते हैं. इसकी सबसे सादा एग्जांपल ये है कि यार आपकी एम्प्लॉय ऑनबोर्डिंग से लेकर आपकी प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजमेंट अगर डेटा पे चल रही हो, तो आपको एक क्लियर आइडिया होगा कि यार आपकी कंपनी कहाँ पे जा रही है, वेदर वो बिजनेस है, वेदर वो स्टार्टअप है, वेदर वो कुछ और है. तो जब डेटा आपको ट्रांसपेरेंसी देता है तो आप बेहतर फैसले करते हैं, आप एक बेहतर विजन के साथ मूव करते हैं और आप तेजी से मूव करते हैं. जब आप इंफॉर्मेशन ओरिएंटेड होकर चलते हैं, यानी कि ज़बानी कलामी चीजों पे चलते हैं, प्रॉपर तरीके से नहीं चलते, तो आपको एक ट्रांसपेरेंसी नहीं होती और आपके फैसले गलत होने का चांस बहुत ज्यादा. सो एवरीथिंग इज बेटर विद डेटा. बिकम डेटा ड्रिवन एज सून एज पॉसिबल. इन फैक्ट आई वुड से बिफोर इवन थिंकिंग अबाउट करियर, have the basic data skills to know how to do data driven thinking, how to think in databases, how to think in tables, how to understand the relations between different entities in tables. Because once you have that transparency and that understanding, you can build things, you can do things better, you can perform a task better. अगर मैंने एक सिंपल टास्क भी करनी हो ना, तो मैं उसके पहले कॉलम बनाता हूँ कि इसका स्टेप 1, स्टेप 2, स्टेप 3, स्टेप 4 क्या होगा. अब वो जितनी भी टास्क है उन्होंने उन सेम कॉलम स्ट्रक्चर को फॉलो करना है, वेदर वो टास्क 1 है या टास्क 31 है. तो यार मैं एक ही बार उसको बना के क्यों ना करूं. अब जब मैं वो सारी की सारी टास्क कंप्लीट करूंगा, तो उन 31 टास्क जो मैंने कंप्लीट किए, मुझे पता होगा कि उनके अंदर किस स्टेप, कौन सा मैंने स्टेप मिस किया है, कौन सा नहीं किया. बजाय कि मैं सोच रहा हूँ ओहो यार वो तो रह ही गया उसके अंदर, ओहो ये स्टेप रह ही गया. क्यों? क्योंकि अगर आप उस तरीके से काम करते रहेंगे, नॉन डेटा ड्रिवन मेथड से आप काम करते रहेंगे, उसमें गन मचता है, उसमें गार्बेज क्रिएट होती है, और हमेशा ये होता है कि फिर इंसान को वो गार्बेज क्लीन अप करनी होती है. आप मिस्टेक करेंगे, अल्टीमेटली कभी ना कभी आके आपको वो मिस्टेक आपके काम करेगा. डिजिटल प्रोडक्ट सर्विसेज के अंदर ये और भी ज्यादा मैटर करता है, क्योंकि आपका तो प्रोडक्ट ही डिजिटल है, आपका तो प्रोडक्ट में ही डेटा प्रोड्यूस करना है. जैसे ही कस्टमर मेरी आपके साथ इंटरेक्ट करता है, इमेंस अमाउंट ऑफ डेटा प्रोड्यूस होता है. ठीक है, अब अगर मैं उस डेटा को समझ ही नहीं सकता, मैं उसको कैपिटलाइज ही नहीं कर सकता, तो मैं बिजनेस डिसीजंस क्या लूंगा. अगर मैं आज एक स्टार्टअप फाउंडर ना भी होता, मैं किसी और कंपनी के लिए काम कर रहा था किसी भी कैपेसिटी के अंदर, अगर मैं डेटा को नहीं समझ के फैसले दे सकता, तो मैं उस कंपनी के ज्यादा इफेक्टिव यूज का नहीं, मैं इफेक्टिवली चीजें नहीं डिलीवर कर सकता. सो दोज आर माय 3 थिंग्स के sorry, I've said so much, but number 3 is to be data driven. Number 2 is to understand your philosophy. I now remember. So number 2 is to understand your philosophy and what kind of way aligns with that philosophy. And number 1 is to be process driven. So process driven, understand your philosophy and pick the path based on the philosophy, not on other things. And the third is to be data driven. So those are my 3 advices to anyone, whether they're in EdTech or whether they're not in EdTech, or whether they're starting out, or whether even they're mid-career. So that's my general advice.
Okay, I think you've covered it very well. And I think whoever is listening to this is going to learn a lot from you. So we're very, very thankful to you that you came to the Startup Grind Fireside Chat today. And we're very pleased to have you here.